Hey everybody, I'm JJ Johnson. You're watching Reality Survival, and today I just wanted to take a few moments to see what I could do to utterly piss off the trolls out there on the internet. No, sort of just kidding. It is kind of fun to do though. But anyway, what this video is going to be about is going to be the top 10 prepper myths that I see talked about all the time. And it really dumbfounds me that people who say, you gotta do your research and all this kind of stuff, buy into some of this stuff. And this is a reality survival channel. That's what this is about reality and living in the real world and understanding the difference between research and fact and confirmation bias. What most people out there on the internet do is they get an idea into their head and they will do research until they find somebody who agrees with them. That's confirmation bias, not research. And then they will take that information and believe it is true. They disregard all the information to the contrary by credible sources, and they believe that somehow fearmongers on the internet are more credible than actual scientific sources that talk about facts, physics, science, and all those kinds of things. So anyway, with that, we'll go ahead and get started on this list. And I'm not going to go into, I've talked about some of these on different videos, and I'm not going to go into great detail because, again, you guys should do your own research. Don't just rely off of what I say. But anyway, with that, number one is the U.S. government wants to see a nationwide collapse. This is the most retarded thing, and I just don't understand where people come up with it. The government, you're talking about politicians primarily, want nothing more than the status quo. They want you, fat, dumb, and happy, paying taxes, because the current system that we have enriches them and empowers them to stay in power longer and longer. Something like 85% of incumbents get re-elected to positions of power. They don't want that to go away. If the system collapses, their power collapses with it. They don't have anything. And some people will be like, well, they have bunkers that they're building and all this kind of stuff. Do you really think that spoiled rich people who live in Washington, D.C. want to go live in an underground bunker somewhere for extended years on end? Because that's what a nationwide collapse would look like. They would not have access to their champagne and their caviar and all the nonsense that they require. They want everything to keep going on end for as long as possible, just like everything is. Okay, let's see. The next one is, and I've done a video about this one, FEMA camps and DHS being a threat to preppers. All right, I did the whole video on it. You can go check that out. I'll try to put it in the link in the description. FEMA camps were nothing more than pre-positioned disaster supplies after Hurricane Katrina. Okay, that's how this whole thing started. Everybody was really upset that George Bush didn't respond faster to Katrina. So in the wake of that, they decided, all right, what we'll do is we'll allocate a bunch of money to FEMA and they will pre-position supplies throughout different areas that are most likely to have disasters. Okay, and they did that. The problem is that for about 15 years, we didn't have hardly any hurricanes or any major disasters. So it was a massive waste of money, and the government stopped the whole program and they took it away. Well, people went to these sites where there were pre-positioned supplies. Alex Jones and the governor, the WWF guy, whatever his name was, and people started taking that footage and they started spreading it around and recopying it and edit it and all that kind of stuff. And everybody thinks, oh my gosh, there's these FEMA camps everywhere. No, there's no FEMA camps anywhere. They don't exist. What they were is you're seeing old footage of pre-positioned supplies so that the government could respond faster to disasters, which is their job. So. Okay, number 3, the government keeps a list of all preppers out there. No. Garbage. Total, complete nonsense. There is no list of preppers anywhere. The government doesn't have any interest in preppers at all whatsoever. The government only has interest in people who are trying to violently overthrow the government, who are working together in a conspiracy to take some kind of outward action to harm people. Violent folks doing illegal things and not working within the political process. That's the only thing that they would have any interest in. And you've seen those militias and different groups like that be prosecuted and stuff like that. Those people who are peaceful, who are working within the system, who are not planning any kind of violence against the government, nobody cares. There's no list out there. I've worked behind the curtain, and I can tell you that it simply does not exist. Okay, and on that same lines, I've heard other people say, "Oh, make sure you don't don't buy your preps with debit cards because they're tracking purchases and all this kind of nonsense." No, they're not at all. That's not how the process works, and there is no agency in the world that has access to that. There are 2,700 different financial institutions that track purchases only because they're done on the debit card system, but that does not go anywhere or feed into any system or anything like that. For government agencies to get that information, they have to send due process, send a subpoena, and get it through the actual legal process. So, and even then, seeing what is actually purchased is still not even a reality. All you see is the total amount from this, manufacturer or whatever, or this store or whatever. So the idea that they're tracking purchases and keeping lists of preppers is total garbage. The next one. This one really probably deserves to be a whole video all on its own, but I'm going to try to keep it short, and that is chemtrails. Chemtrails crack me the hell up. Chemtrails are not chemtrails, they are contrails, which is condensation trails. And that is because you have the moisture from a jet exhaust coming out into a cold environment, and that moisture crystallizes into a condensation trail. The drier the air is, the less length of time that condensation trail lasts. The more wet the environment is, the longer it will stay, and the more persistent it will stay. And you'll say, "Oh my gosh, but I've seen pictures of the inside of planes that have all these tanks in them and everything where, they're spraying the atmosphere and all that kind of stuff." No, what you're actually seeing are ballast tanks in test planes so that they can move weight from one place to another, and they can shift the weight. It's basically, those tanks are there to simulate the weight of people and the seats and all that kind of stuff, their luggage and everything else, and they can move that to different parts of the plane so that they can be able to test the trimming and the handling and all that kind of stuff when they're developing planes. They're ballast tanks. Then the other thing that you see people talk about on chemtrail videos is like, look, see, you can look out the window and you can see that they're spraying stuff out. That's fuel dumping. That is required for some aircraft to land because they don't have the capability to land with full tanks. So they have to dump their fuel before they can land. Otherwise, the landing gear and all that kind of stuff is going to get messed up. And you could say that that's not good, but whatever the case may be. The other thing is people who like to purvey fear-mongering is they will take half-truths, and so they'll say, yeah, but there's research being done on cloud seeding. And there is research being done on cloud seeding. But that doesn't mean that all the aircraft that you see flying above you have tanks and thousands and thousands of gallons of chemicals that they're spraying on you. I want you to think about what kind of a secret it would take to hide that from the public, okay? Because you have literally millions of people who don't have security clearances working at airports, all right, working at plane manufacturing plants, who are doing maintenance on the planes, who work at the petroleum factories where this is done. I mean, or where where fuel is made, and where, you know, there's so many people involved in this process. If this was a real thing, there would be tons of information on it going all over the place. It would have to be public knowledge, and there would be plenty of proof showing that it was real. And there's not. There's a lot of really shoddy compilations of taking certain things and trying to make it look like it's real. But when you look at the research, and I'll put a lot of the sources for this down in the description below, there is no way that it is even possible. And let's look at what people who say chemtrails are real say. They say that you're doing this for mind control, you're doing it for population control, and for climate control. Okay, well, if that's the case, they're doing it for mind control. Have you seen all the disagreement between people? If there was really this big program to make people more subdued and to make them more susceptible to mind control and all that kind of stuff, would you have such disagreements between people like we do right now, left and right and all that kind of stuff? I mean, would you have so many people buying guns? The gun purchases have been going through the roof. Would you have so many people rioting in the streets and all that kind of stuff? I mean, if it is a program, it's a pretty damn failed one because it ain't working. The other one is climate control. Well, if they're using it for climate control, why is there such a big hysteria about the climate is terrible and all this kind of stuff? No. Okay, it doesn't make sense. And what was the other one? What was it? Mind control. I forgot. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's all garbage. Okay, the next one, I'm going to move on to the next one, is the Georgia Guidestones. Everybody freaks out about the Georgia Guidestones, and they're like, oh my God, see, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to kill people and depopulate the planet and all this kind of stuff. No, they're not. The Georgia Guidestones were produced by one person. They were bought and purchased by one person who put his personal philosophy out to the world on these stones as a monument. That's all it was. It's one person, one guy who lived down there in the area. He was a local businessman, and he put this stuff out there because that was what he wanted to make it an announcement to the world. And people have taken this and tried to make it into some mysterious thing and all that kind of stuff. I'll put a link to the video in the description below. That is a documentary that shows, you know, who the guy was and why he did this and all this kind of stuff. The Georgia Guidestones are nobody's opinion but one man. That's all. That's all it is. All right, the next one, number 6, NDAA. The military is going to confiscate your preps if there's ever a big national disaster. This is stupid beyond belief. The NDAA is written so that the government and the military in time of national need would be able to seize the property of companies, big companies. We're talking about, you know, grocery warehouses and stuff like that, so that they could take the food and be able to distribute it in a time of emergency to the people, you know, in a rational way. That does not mean that the government is going to go door to door to people's houses looking for food. That endeavor in and of itself would cost more calories than they would ever find. You'd get no juice for the squeeze. It doesn't make any sense logistically. What it would take, there are 20,000 cities in the United States. It would take an unbelievable amount of time, energy, and resources, gas, fuel. I mean, the number of troops that would end up getting killed and get into firefight. I mean, it would be a logistical disaster to try to go house to house to do anything. Firearms confiscation, food confiscation, I don't care what it is. It could not happen. The United States military, as powerful as we are, is nowhere near close to being strong enough to do or take on any kind of endeavor like that. It could never ever happen on a nationwide scale. It could not happen. It's just not even feasible. Now, could it happen in a small area or something along those lines in a short-term regional disaster? Sure, it probably could happen on a small scale. It could not happen on a huge nationwide scale. There's no way. Okay, the next thing is, and I don't know how this one ends up persisting so long, but the Russian troops, there's Russian troops already stationed in the mountains of Colorado, and they're like, I guess they think they're pre-deployed here to start war with us or something. No, that's not true. There are no foreign troops stationed anywhere in our country for any period longer than what the training that they're doing takes place. We work with multiple different countries all the time in exchanges of training, where we exchange training for their troops or whatever the case may be, because our military is the best in the world. And so part of the foreign military aircraft sales program, when we sell aircraft and different kinds of gear and equipment to different countries, we also provide training with that. So those troops will come to our country and they'll get trained up on whatever it is their country purchased, and then they end up going back home. It's a temporary thing, and there are never any significant numbers at all, and I'm talking less than 100 at any one given time from any particular country or whatever. Okay, the next one is, and this one cracks me up too. UN vehicles are being shipped into America because, the UN is coming and they're a big threat, which I did a video on this as well. The UN is no threat whatsoever. They could not even maintain peace in one mid-sized city. I'm talking like even one, not like Atlanta. They couldn't even subdue Atlanta. They're not a threat to anybody. The United Nations is primarily it's a wealth transfer program is really all that it is. And pretty much every facet and every program that the United Nations does exists for the specific purpose of building allies and transferring wealth from powerful nations like our own, like Britain, France, places like that, to less powerful places in order so that we can get the resources that we want from them, we can get their cooperation in regional issues and stuff like that. That's all it is. Anyway, so UN vehicles being shipped in America. The reason that there are UN vehicles here in America is because United States companies produce those vehicles. They make them and they paint them for the countries that are going to buy them. And then they ship them out to their countries. And so they have to be shipped out by railway or whatever to the nearest port. People be driving along on the highway and they take, cell phone video and they're like, oh my God, it's a UN invasion. No, it's just, commerce happening in the United States. Companies producing vehicles for UN countries because those countries are responsible to provide their own equipment for, per the agreements that the UN sets forth. Okay, the next one is the flat earthers. Yeah, I'm not even going to say anything else. Number 10 is nationwide martial law. All right, as I said earlier, there are 20,000 cities. I've also done a video on this one. There are 20,000 cities in the United States. There is no chance that our 2 million or so people could ever maintain any semblance of martial law. Now, you have to understand what martial law is. Martial law is the suspension of all civil liberties. That is where the government, the military, takes over the function of all civilian government roles. Now, a lot of people like to say, oh, well, that doesn't matter because we've got drones and tanks and all this kind of stuff, and we can use those things to subdue the populace. No, you can't. And the reason is because that then becomes civil war, all right? When you start bombing people and all that kind of stuff, you're not maintaining peace. That's what martial law is meant to do, is maintain the peace in the absence of civil government. And it is a very, very difficult task for the military to do because they're not made to work that way. And it is quite honestly a commander's worst nightmare. No military commander would ever want to endeavor into martial law. Okay, it is the hardest thing to do because you are walking a fine line between trying to maintain peace and actually having to engage in civil war against your own citizens. You cannot be too heavy-handed in martial law. You cannot use tanks and drones and fighter planes and all that kind of stuff on the citizenry, because you will immediately be transitioned into an out-and-out civil war. Okay, there are two separate and distinct things, and people like to get them confused, and there just simply isn't enough manpower. But you could watch that other video where I break it down for you just for one city, the size of Chicago, how many troops it would take, and all this kind of stuff. It is simply impossible for it to happen nationwide, let alone the fact that the United States troops, 80% of them would never, ever, ever buy into doing it. But then you have the whole logistics about how you would have to spread people out, how you would have to work, and the number of shifts and all this kind of stuff. It's just simply not true, not capable of happening. So anyway, guys, I'm so looking forward to the comments on this one, because I'm sure I just really irritated all the trolls and all that kind of stuff that's out there. And hey, I just want to say, please unsubscribe, because I don't really want you trolls watching my channel anyway. I'm actually trying to spread good information about disaster preparedness, wilderness survival, bushcraft, different things like that, outdoor gear reviews, and we don't need the trolls watching. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. As always, I definitely appreciate it when you click thumbs up, when you share it with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. And don't forget to live the 6 Ps. Proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. Oh yeah, and people will say, well, JJ, if you don't believe any of this stuff's happening and that the government is conspiring against us, then what do you prep for? I prep for all kinds of stuff, man. Series of unfortunate events. We live in an economy that is fragile. Things could happen. Regional disasters do happen all the time. Weather-related disasters happen all the time. People lose their jobs. I prep for all the practical reasons and the things that are most likely to happen, not, the unlikely things that are a really low probability on any kind of, reality scale. So anyway, guys, stay safe, and we'll see you in another video shortly.